We'll declare the meeting open at 4 p.m. Disclaimer: the members of the public are advised that recommendations to Council contained within this agenda can be subject to alteration. Applicants and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until such time as written advice is received confirming Council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval from the Shire. The Shire advises that anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcomes of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by Council regarding the application. An audio and or visual record will be made of these proceedings to assist in the taking of minutes. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community, and we pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their cultures and to elders both past and present. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Michelle Boylan, Councillor Craig Caboni and Councillor Tanya Justin. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Neil? Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Bromman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought this might be appropriate given the decisions we may be making today. When we build, let us think that we build forever. Let it not be for the present delight, nor for the present use alone. Let it be such work as our descendants will thank us for, and let us think, as we lay stone on stone, that the time is to come when those stones will be held sacred because our hands have touched them, and that men will say, as they look upon the labour and wrought substance of them, see this, our fathers did for us. John Ruskin.
Thank you, Councillor Bromman. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. Are there any other interests that aren't listed on the screen, councillors?
Keeps
Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 12.2.5, the Treendale intersection. I work adjacent to that, so there may be a perception of impartiality, so I'll declare impartiality and interest in that, but I'll stay in chambers for the discussion. And 12.5.1, the LLC Court Expansion Working Group. I'm the council delegate on that, and again I'll declare an impartiality, interest and stay in chambers.
Thank you. Any other interest? Okay, item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Item 7, public question time. 2 written down. Bill Adams, do you like to go first?
Yeah.
Yes. In these uncertain times, given that neighbouring local governments have brought in a rate increase of between 0 and 2.5, with the Bunbury Mayor publicly stating that 2.5 was too much, how is this local government able to justify an increase of all but 5% in real terms? And I have it anecdotally that there's a view with some bidding up ratepayers that this increase in effect amounts to 12%. How much of this increase will be gobbled up in administration, and what will the ratepayer see as a result of this increase? What figure will be seen as sufficiently attractive to encourage ratepayers to pay up in full and on time going forward? And lastly, what impact will the building of 2 hubs, a $21 million project, and the current Bunbury-Harvey Regional Council problem, a need, I understand, for several $1 million injection, have on us ratepayers going forward?
Thank you, Mr. Adams. In regards to rate increases, there are examples of other local governments that have had rate increases as high as 8.6%, and so every local government looks at their projects and what is required in regards to servicing for their shire residents. In regards to your query in regards to the Binging Up area, there was a special area rate that was applied around the Lakewood Shores area, and this was in regards to the increased landscaping that was applied to that area as a result of the Shire having to take on the maintenance of that when the developer left. In regards to how we will ensure that rates are paid in full and on time, you would be aware that the Shire offers a discount for early payment, and we are one of few local governments in the southwest that offer a rates discount. We've been very fortunate in the past that ratepayers have paid on time, and I believe our outstanding rates are among the lowest in the southwest. In regards to building 2 hubs and the financial implications of that, the $21 million is not an actual figure that relates to those projects. We have at the moment funds in the forward capital works plan and the long-term financial plan, but the actual costs of any build will be determined by the actual final scope, which we are going through at this time, informed by community consultation. Once that's known, we'll have that costed up. In regards to these projects as well, there has been a discussion from councillors in regards to staging those developments to ensure that it's fiscally responsible, but knowing the asset management costs that the Shire already has to maintain many community buildings and also ageing facilities for Shire administration offices in Harvey. In regards to the Bunbury-Harvey Regional Council problem, that's obviously under discussion at the moment, and the complete financials as to that situation are unknown at this time. There will be a requirement for capping of the unlined cells, and Bunbury-Harvey Regional Council is looking at how that can be funded internally, and then also what the line cells project will encompass. So at this stage, Council is aware that there may be the requirement to be guarantor for any loan funds for the Bunbury-Harvey Regional Council, but until we have a final determination of those costs, it hasn't been able to be considered by Council. That will all be factored into the long-term financial plan, and Council is aware that we will review that plan once we have that information.
Whichever way you look at it, ratepayers are going to be impacted.
Thank you for your statement.
Yes or no?
On the Bunbury-Harvey Regional Council?
Yes.
That's to be decided yet.
A very smooth answer. Thank you.
And a lot of that is probably come from a different source. Mr. Joe Capgregor, have a question?
Thank you for the opportunity to ask a few questions on the proposed dog kennels at 8th Street, Harvey. Property that is belongs to my daughter. So I've got a couple of questions from the last meeting, and they are, first question is for the planning department, and that is there any part of the building application submitted by Amy Capagreco that doesn't meet building codes, Shire regulations or rules, or doesn't align with the current regulations and rules that are set down for the Harvey Shire?
You want those answered on the way through, or?
You can answer that one if you like, Simon. Yeah.
Sorry, Joe, I wasn't sure if you're going to ask all your questions and I'll answer it at the end. Look, as far as the building side of it and the codes and everything, The development application really just deals with the land use itself. So as far as codes and compliance with Australian standards, we'll deal with that at the building licence stage. But at the moment, the application's been received for a land use that can be considered under the planning framework. I believe there's management plans that have been submitted that have the potential to be considered by council in terms of being able to mitigate some of the issues. So it is an application that rightly, I think when we first engaged with the applicant, it can be considered. So it is a compliant application. Is it the correct use for that block based on the concerns that have been raised through the community consultation process? That's the issue that is needing to be debated with the councillors.
So is it fair to say that the basis on refusal for the application is based solely on public consultation?
Through Mr. Chair. Look, the community consultation does have a significant weight with regard to the decision, the officer's recommendation. The other side of it is that the required separation distances that are for these particular land use is quite substantial. It's the 500 metres, and we're looking at a much lesser one. So, based on the assessment by my officers and the community consultation that's been received, it's considered that it's not an appropriate land use for that site at the scale that was being proposed. Now, you recall we said maybe make it smaller and trial it for a little while, but the application as presented and as assessed tended to be more appropriately refused than recommended for approval.
And at last week's meeting, wasn't it said that that is only a guide that's presented?
That is exactly correct, yes. And a guide, and in responding to that, I think if the guide says 500, if we were looking at 200, 300, 400, that's not too bad. But when you're looking at a guide that goes from 500 down to almost 100, just under 100, then the stretch of that guide, in terms of the potential impact, is considered to be quite significant.
Okay. I make that point being very significant. Okay, so the survey that we've undertaken shows that the closest premises is 180 odd metres. It was also made clear at the last meeting that there was a 80-metre residence, which we have investigated, right, and I believe is false. My second real question is, for the proposed operating procedures that were submitted with the plan, is there anything in those procedures that states that the proposed business does not align with any of the Shire recommendations, Shire bylaws, environmental, whatsoever? Are the procedures that was tabled suitable for that type of business?
Through Mr. Chair. Look, as far as those separation distances, Joe, look, I apologise if I got those distances wrong. So, yeah. And as far as the management plans that have been submitted, I have gone through those. There's nothing that they're proposing that couldn't be supported. It's just whether or not the councillors feel that the management plans that are proposed and how that management is actually proposed to be undertaken, if that is suitable to address the concerns of the immediate neighbours. So it's not that we haven't got plans, it's not that those plans can't be approved, it's whether or not those plans, in the opinion of the councillors, are adequate to actually address the concerns of the neighbours.
Okay, just finally, just closing. So, Ms. Capagreco has carried a survey, a wider survey of the area, which I believe she has submitted.
Yes.
So, if we are looking at public consultation on this, which to me, unfortunately says, well, that's what the decision is based on, because we've just said that the plans are in alignment, the procedures are in alignment. I believe that Amy Capagreco has received over 30 positive consultations and backup from business and services in Harvey that want the proposed building to go, against, I believe, maybe 5 negative. So I would take that into account when final decision has been made. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Mr. Sheila Ferguson.
Sheila Ferguson, number 4, Unit 4, 58 Old Coast Road, Australind. I sent a letter to all councillors about item 12.1.3 and specifically the officer recommendation that the proposed new Australand Community Precinct be located at the Leisure Centre site. I have a copy of that if anybody doesn't have it. I have two further questions. What was the cost of the community consultation process?
The community consultation was undertaken in-house, so with staff resources, besides printing and promotional materials, printing of maps. We did not engage any consultants.
But there would have been an in-house cost if you employed your staff. Would you not cost that?
Well, that's part of their role. We utilise community development staff and the manager of special projects who is responsible for this project, so that would be seen as part of their role.
Secondly, has any councillor or shire officer had any formal or informal discussion with any real estate developer or other business person about the possible sale of the current Australand site? And if so, who was it with? Who initiated the discussion? Who authorised it? Were councillors made aware of it behind closed doors at the agenda briefing last week? And did it influence the officer recommendation on the location of the proposed new Australand Community Precinct?
Sounds like we're at the RAF airbase. That was why the meeting went behind closed doors, because of information that had come forward.
Well, my
on
questions
that
are,
day.
has any shire officer or councillor had any formal or informal discussion with any real estate developer or any other business person about the possible sale of the current Australian site?
Yes, Mr. Hall.
Through Mr. Chairman, the answer to that, Ms. Ferguson, is yes. Officers have spoken to a whole range of different entities, whether they be real estate agents, developers, landowners, and generally once the report actually came available. So there was discussion in the report that raised the issue in terms of likely sale of land or development, and a combination of both. Shire officers were approached by industry and we made approaches to industry, and I think it's quite an important role. We have economic development officers, we have sustainable development officers. That is our role, to actually advise council of all aspects of the issues, and the economic impact is one of them. So
so can you tell me who was it with? That my question was who were the discussions?
Look, we can't, for the very reason that we went behind closed doors last council meeting, is that they're commercial in confidence.
But
so,
not who. I'm not asking for
You
figures.
did.
I'm asking who you've discussed it with.
That's to answer the question.
Well, the
of
next
who,
one was who initiated the discussion?
I just answered that one. It was a combination of both. We have received requests from the development industry, and we have gone out to development industry to gauge interest in a whole range of different scenarios.
Who authorised it?
Well, ultimately, as a director of the Sustainable Business Unit, myself, also the CEO and Shire President. That's what we're employed to do.
Were councillors made aware of it behind closed doors at the agenda briefing last week?
The discussions...
It was apparent that one councillor was not aware of it because he asked a question before you went behind closed doors, so it seemed that councillors weren't aware of these discussions until you went behind closed doors.
All the discussions that we've had with a variety of entities, we have fully briefed councillors in that regard. The question was asked because the report made reference to the potential sale of this particular land and other parcels of land, and so it was a question, what discussions have been held?
Okay, and the last bit was, did the discussions influence the officer recommendation on the location of the proposed new Australian Community Centre? Did those discussions with developers influence the officer recommendation?
The officer's recommendation remains exactly as written, regardless of those discussions. The discussions that we have this afternoon, I don't know what how that's going to play out.
I request that my question be recorded in full and accurately, and I have a copy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Okay, item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. Amy. Deputation with regard to item 12.3.1.
Good afternoon, President, councillors and Shire staff. Thanks again for letting me speak. I've been told by a couple of the people that the councillors rarely vote against the ruling that the Planning Department recommends. I respect that most times the work that the Planning Department has done is final. But on this occasion, I cannot see where the decision has been made on real evidence, rules, or aligned with the building codes. I believe this is an arbitrary decision. I would like to see where the decision is backed up with hard and fast rules or codes to identify the issues with my application. I wanted a chance to follow my dreams and open up a small legitimate business. I'm a 26-year-old resident of Harvey, and I must say this process has been very deflating. It doesn't give me the motivation to want to do any more for my town. My apologies, I don't want to be offensive, but you need people like me in this community as it ages. It's people like me that would be an active member in our community. Older people complain about the youth that they do nothing. I want to do something, and I want to try and put a stop to it and you want to try and put a stop to it without giving me a chance. I'm aware that some of my neighbours are retired and don't like change and like their serenity and are living on their dream properties. But I too am living on my dream property and would like to run it the way I've dreamed. My neighbours think that it is only my dogs that bark. Well, I'm telling you and them, it is not always my dogs that bark. It's actually some of the people that are against my kennels. Their dogs also bark. In my experience, dogs bark for a reason, and I know mine definitely do. If my dogs do bark, I am the first to go out and investigate why they are barking. I'm not sure if you're all aware, but I am surrounded by fox dens that are on people's properties, and in particular, three of the properties that are against my kennels. Because of the fox surrounding our property, I have kept my dogs in for the past 4 months, with exceptions of a night here and there. In that time, a fox has taken a lamb, 6 chickens and 2 of my ducks. I'd like to read a statement from my closest neighbour. We live across the road in the intended boarding kennels of lot 273 8th Street. We wish to inform you that prior to Amy purchasing the property, there were days and nights that many dogs in the area have been and still are barking. There are times I hear dogs barking but can't always work out where they are, so how can people in the area know for sure that they're Amy's dogs that are barking? We don't have any issue with Amy's dogs or intended boarding kennels. We are surrounded by dog owners and their dogs on many occasions. We've had issues with a rooster that was crowing at all hours. We told Amy, and immediately she rehoused the rooster for us. Problem solved. We would love to see her given the chance to start up a small business in Harvey. Forward thinking from a young person, I believe, should be commended, not opposed. Thank you, Dom and Pam Fazzolari. I have a signed copy of this letter. If anyone would like it, I could email it to you. I asked the Planning Department on what basis the report has been prepared to refuse the application. When the question was made to council staff on the 21st of the 4th, 2021 regarding the property zoning that was made clear that the zoning was correct. When the plans and procedures have been developed under the guidance of the council staff from a meeting held with council on the 28th of the 4th, 2021, I asked the question what had to be submitted and what would the required plans, procedures and information be tabled for the approved process. I've covered all the requirements and more to enable the application to be approved. When at the last meeting there was a question asked if the Shire had any registered complaints regarding excessive barking from my property, the answer was no. No formal complaints had been registered. At the last meeting, it was mentioned there was a residence at 80 metres away from the kennel location. This is false. I also have confirmed with the Shire that there is no one has applied to build in the 10 acres next door to me. So every existing dwelling is more than 80 metres, our closest is 196. I'm assuming that the decision has been made due to public consultation, not going in my favour, without real data to back it up. Only the fact that people won't give me a chance to even start up because it might disturb their peace. Would it be better if we were people that had parties every weekend or played music loud every weekend? No, because we have respect and consideration. There has been no respect and consideration given to me at all. We have an orchard at the rear of our property, and when they are spraying, harvesting or grading, there is always noise and overspray to our property. I do not understand how businesses can get approved in the Shire Council basis. I do not understand how a business can get approval if the Shire Council bases its decision on assumptions of neighbours. I would like to point out that in the past there has been many public complaints about businesses and services in the Harvey Shire, both industrial and commercial, which have been granted approval even though the public complaints have been registered. For example, the Puma service station, and more current, the Binning Up Lime Pit. I feel as a young person trying to make an income on my property, provide a much needed service to our community, has been singled out and not given the opportunity to give it a go without any consideration. The existing boarding kennels have very limited numbers, and it is definitely an area that could do with increasing. I ask the councillors before they cast their votes, consider giving me a go and having faith in the young community, because there are some of us that do care and do want a future for Harvey. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, item 9, announced. I'll just read out, sorry about that, I'll read out deputation from Rowan with regards to 12.5.2 Harvey Rec Ground Drainage Project. Thank you, councillors and staff, for the opportunity to provide comment on item 12.5.2 Harvey Recreation Ground Drainage Project. Please find attached with this deputation our deputation presented to councillors and staff at the agenda briefing session on the 23rd of September 2021. Harvey Benja Cricket Club has always welcomed the proposal to improve the drainage of the Harvey Recreation Ground, which will provide opportunity for Harvey Hawks Soccer Club to use the Harvey Rec Ground and the boundary as a home. Harvey Benja Cricket Club still has a strong preference to retain overlapping playing surfaces with the Southern AFL Oval, option 1B, due to the reasons highlighted in the attached deputation. At the agenda briefing session on 23rd of September, the Director of Infrastructure, Mr Rick Lotsnicker, presented an alternative drainage design to councillors that was a combination of option 1A and option 1B. This drainage design included option 1A, Northern Drainage Design, option 1B, Eastern Drainage Design, and Southern and Western Drainage common to both designs. Harvey Benja Cricket Club believe that this is the most advantageous outfall drainage design that will provide the greatest flexibility into the future. Harvey Benja Cricket Club requests that the officer's recommendation 2 be amended to include a combination of option 1A, Northern Drainage Design, and option 1B, Eastern Drainage Design. Thank you, councillors, once again for the opportunity for our club to comment on item 12.5.2, Harvey Recreation Ground Drainage Project. Yours sincerely, Rowan Morrison. Okay, item 9, announcements by a presiding member or CEO without discussion. Just on behalf of councillors and staff, we would like to extend our condolences to Councillor Simpson and his family on the recent passing of his mother. You've been in our thoughts and prayers. And also to the family of former councillor Emily Hill, who is a former Citizen of the Year award winner within the Shire. And just a reminder that her funeral is on the 1st of October at 11 a.m. at St Nicholas Church here in Australind. And just a welcome to Chesson Rintoul, who is our new Corporate and Community Engagement Officer. So welcome to the Shire of Harvey. And welcome back to Vicky Small as the Manager of Strategy. So welcome back, Vicky. Item 10, ordinary confirmation of minutes. Ordinary Council meeting Tuesday 24th of August 2021. Recommendation that the minutes of the Council meeting held on Tuesday 24th of August 2021 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Move Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Dickinson. Any questions, any queries? Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. Chief Executive Officer Employment Committee, which was held on Tuesday the 14th of September 2021. Recommendation that the minutes of the Chief Executive Officer Employment Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 14th of September 2021 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Move Councillor Dickinson, second Councillor Campbell. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Local Emergency Management Committee, Monday the 13th of September 2021, that the minutes of the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting held on Monday the 13th of September 2021 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Mover Councillor Lovett, seconder Councillor Campbell. Likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12, reports. Shire of Harvey Standing Orders Local Law 2017 permits Council to adopt recommendations by exception resolution. Recommendations contained in the Office of Report were adopted by exception resolution with the exception of the following items. So it'd be 12.1.1 Yarloop Steam Workshop Interpretation Centre. Item 12.1.2 Brunswick Junction Community Resource Centre lease renewal. Item 12.1.3 Australind Community Precinct Consultation Report. 12.1.4 the Harvey Community Precinct Consultation Report. 12.2.5 Attender T082021 Treendale Intersection Upgrades. 12.3.1 Proposed Dog Kennel, Lot 123, 8th Street, Harvey. 12.3.3 Proposed Extractive Industry, Sand, Lot 2, Goss Road, Uta. 12.3.4 Development Application, Overheight Retaining Walls. 12.4.1 Financial Statements as at 31st of June 2021. 12.5.1 Leschnolt Leisure Centre Court Expansion Project. 12.5.2 Harvey Recreation Ground Drainage Project, and 19.1.1 Destination Harvey Region. They are the ones that will all be discussed.
Oh, I thought you were pulling them from
No, all the ones that either have an absolute majority,
I was about to leap from
an impartiality interest or a financial interest all need to be discussed. Is there any others that councillors may wish to take out of those 8 wish to discuss? All happy? Move Councillor Burgoyne. Seconder, Councillor Dickinson. Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, item 12.1.1, Yarloop Steam Workshop Interpretation Centre tender. Mover, Councillor Dickinson. Second, Councillor Bromham. Is there likely to be any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.1.2, Brunswick Junction Community Resource Centre lease renewal. Move Councillor Dickinson, second Councillor Burgoyne. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 9-0, absolute majority. Item 12.1.3, Australian Community Precinct Consultation Report. Councillor Campbell.
Yes, I have a alternate motion for this report. Would you like me to read it out? My alternate motion is to defer the decision until the November 2021 Ordinary Council meeting in order to provide for further consideration of the options.
And the reason for further information?
Yes.
Basically, yes, yeah. Second, Councillor Beach. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I put forward these points for Council's consideration in deferring this decision today. Our community consultation has shown that approximately 41.9% of the respondents of the community have indicated they supported the existing site as the preferred location, and this is supported by a further 16 comments, compared to the 23% in support of the LLC option. And it would appear that we are ignoring it, and I believe that this is folly. Where is our due diligence? Today we've walked the ground for the first time and been provided with further information that might provide another course of options available to us. And here we are today trying to make an informed decision on strategic infrastructure that will be here to service the Shire for at least the next 50 years. So the reason for this alternate motion is to defer the decision, as I believe we need more time for robust consideration and discussion on this matter before making this decision. We've had a half-an-hour workshop which basically outlined the outcomes of the community consultation and introduced further options. We've walked the proposed site locations only this afternoon, and since then we've been presented with other options. So councillors, I feel uncomfortable about making this decision today, and I ask that you consider a deferment until council is able to workshop the options thoroughly and a full appreciation of this matter is given.
Seconder, wish to speak?
Not at this stage, Mr. President.
Is there a speaker against the motion? Likely to be any discussion at all? Just with probably with the mover and the seconders may need to wish to put a dot point that should this alternative motion get up, that we may need to put in another dot point that the KPIs for the CEO will need to be adjusted accordingly.
Yep.
So if you're happy with that, we can put that in as an added point. Okay, so if there's no more discussion, I'll put the alternative recommendation. Is there anyone against the recommendation? Passed. Okay, item number 12.1.4, Harvey Community Precinct Consultation Report. Have the officer recommendation, page 11. Move Councillor Beach, second Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Beach.
Just a question, sir. I asked the question at the last agenda briefing that, and I'm not sure that we're going to need a point 4 there, because of the answer that I got, that we're going to receive the amended Harvey Community Master Plan to guide future decisions and progress in the project. And I asked, was this going to go out to the community once received by council, and the answer was yes. I just ask, out of curiosity, do we need to highlight that, or is that a gimme that will happen? I'm happy to move item 4 if you believe it's in the statement.
Yes, it was the intention that after the master plan had been amended and adopted by council, that it would be distributed to the community for their information. So I don't see the need to put it in as a dot point, but if you wanted to, then you can.
No, I'm quite happy to accept, that explanation, and we are live. We are live. So. Thank you.
Is there likely to be any speakers against? Any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.2.5. Councillor Burgoyne. Yeah. Okay, item 12.2.5. Block your ears, Councillor Burgoyne. Okay, item 12.2.5, tender T082021, Treendale intersection upgrades. Move Councillor Bromham. Second, Councillor Lovett. Is there likely to be any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. .2.5, Councillor Burgoyne was moved, Councillor Bromham, second Councillor Lovett, and passed 8-0. Item 12.3.1, proposed dog kennel lot 123 8th Street in Harvey. We have a officer recommendation for Councillor Bromham.
I'll move it.
The seconder, Councillor Campbell. Wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Bromham?
Could I
Councillor
interrupt,
Beach,
please,
yes.
first? I do have a foreshadowed motion, but before Councillor Bromham addresses their officer's recommendations, I'd like displayed on the board, please.
Yes.
Basically, it's that we approve it.
Councillor Bronwyn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Puts a little bit more clarity on it, doesn't it? I speak for the officer's recommendation because I believe there is a building envelope only 18 metres away from this location, and what we're doing at the moment is we're looking at the issue from what is existing in the location at the present time. And I believe that the noise complaints that have been issued in the past and the problems outlined by our public consultation period have to be given heavy weight. I do, however, look at the building kennel and the sign support for this process. However, the documentation provided to the council only provides names, no addresses, and I don't know where these people live or how they might be related to individuals or whatever. So I don't think this meets the criteria of an actual. Anyway, so I think we need to look at our consultation process as it was. It provided ample opportunity for anyone who wanted to be for or against this kennel to have their say at that particular time, and therefore given the officer's recommendation in regard to the 500 metres / 80 metres from a proposed dwelling and the 196 metres from the dwelling that exists at the moment, I feel these would be far too close to a kennel of the size proposed, and therefore I support the officer's recommendation.
Seconder. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I channel Donald Trump for a minute and say some false news going around. But there's a lot been said in opposition about this proposal. It relates to property prices suffering. It has been stated that they would not have purchased a property in the area if they knew the kennels could be built. That suggests to me a lack of due diligence checks. And kennels within 80 metres of a dwelling. Now the applicants have sent to all councillors, and I printed mine off, that there is no dwelling within 80 metres of the proposed kennel. There are properties vacant, and there might be a proposal to build there one day, but that proposal shouldn't be taken into account because there's no applications that have yet been made. So, according to the aerial here, I know Mr. Capagrego said 196, I think, it says 175. I can tell you that the Shire Depot Pound is in with 190 metres, and it's not in critical heights, by the way. It's down towards Weir Road. So the facts are that the effect on property pricing isn't a planning issue. The land is zoned intensive farming, and therefore kennels can be considered, as Mr. Hall pointed out earlier. And I've mentioned about the nearest residents. And I received an email last night that said comments about the Shire Pound being built before critical heights, and this is true. And it was given as an example by me to say that residents and kennels can coexist inside the recommended 50 metre exclusion zone. Another correspondent said that the 9th Street vet was in the location before the intensive farmlands were split into lifestyle blocks. Those blocks were never split into lifestyle blocks. They've existed as 10-acre or 4-hectare blocks since Adam was a boy. They were dairy farms in the day. And they were used primarily for milk production, an iconic brand of the Harvey region. Purchasers have chose some of the best agricultural land in this state for a lifestyle block. It is zoned intensive farming, not residential, as I've said in a recent email. And in my opinion, should be used for production, not a lifestyle. I think it's an absolute disgrace that we're not using those as some sort of production. I think council should support the application, and if the applicant is
Councillor Brom.
Point of order, Mr. President. I just want to keep to the argument. It's got nothing to do with where that dog kennels are as far as the Shire is concerned. It's got nothing to do with what the land was used for in the past or the present. It's got to do with whether a dog kennels should be there or not. So I think it contain the argument to the actual application.
I'm rebutting emails that have been circulated to council, Mr. President. And those emails were sent to every councillor as late as last night. But I'll move on. Should council support the application, the applicant, and she accepts the conditions which are on the board, including a 12-month review, she then must be very confident that she can address all the issues raised. Otherwise, it would be futile to spend money to establish the kennels for only 12 months. I would ask that the officer's recommendation be rejected and consideration be given to the alternative recommendation that supports the proposal with conditions.
Another speaker for the motion. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. And councillors, this is always going to be a sensitive issue, and I commend Amy for her application for her kennel. But I speak in support of the staff's recommendation, as I believe, councillors, that we need to consider the protection of the residential amenity of the surrounding properties, most of which are closer to the kennel than the EPA separation guidelines of the 500 metre buffer. So, on those, in that instance, I'm satisfied on the planning grounds of the staff recommendation and believe that it is sound, and support the recommendation.
There another speaker against. Speaker for. Councillor Bromman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought Councillor Campbell rounded it up pretty well. We have these areas set aside for protection of the public. I've been involved many times where, as was outlined previously by the applicant, in fact, that we haven't done that, and it's come back to bite us. And I think it's very important that we keep to the legislative requirements or guidelines to ensure that the community amenity is maintained.
So I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Four against. Motion's carried. We've got 10-5-4. Okay, item 12.3.3, Councillor Burgoyne, you have a financial interest. Speakers. Item 12.3.4. point 3.3, proposed extractive industry sand, Lot 2, Goss Road, UDA. We have a very lengthy officer recommendation. Councillor Bromham,
Yeah, move it.
moving.
Yeah.
Seconder. Councillor Lovett. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Move Councillor Bromham, second Councillor Lovett, passed 9-0. Councillor Burgoyne. Okay, item 12.3.4, development application overheight retaining wall. There is an addendum to this report. Councillor Dickinson moving. Councillor Burgoyne second. Is there likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.4.1, financial statements as at 31st of June 2021. There is an addendum to this as well, councillors. Officer recommendation that council receives the financial statements as at 31st of July 2021. Councillor Campbell moving. Councillor Dickinson second. There's likely to be any discussion. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.5.1, Leschnoff Leisure Centre Court Expansion Project. We have the officer recommendation on page 34. Councillor Lovett moving, Councillor Dickinson second. Is there likely to be any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.5.2, Harvey Recreation Ground Drainage Project. This also has an addendum to it, councillors. Councillor Bromham moving, the seconder. Councillor Beach. Is there any likely to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 19. Sorry. Okay, item 13. I've got about 3 papers here, Mr. Hall. Like reading the Financial Review in the West Australian. Item 13, elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given. Ms. Nil. Item 14, notice of motion for the following meeting. Nil. Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given. Nil. Item 16, reports of members. Anyone? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since this may be my last meeting, I've just got a couple of shout-outs that I'd like to give. I attended the official opening of the Binning Up Community Garden on the 11th of September, and we'd just like to acknowledge the efforts of Sue Della and her husband Greg. Congratulations on following through in this project, and it's a wonderful community project to see. I'd also like to acknowledge a lady in Leschenault who has been volunteering on the Leschenault Progress Association for 26 years, and it's Mrs. Deborah Pollock. And her volunteer role has included the hall coordinator of Settlers Hall and also the cleaning of the hall for more than 13 years. And she is retiring and is well deserved to be retiring, and I wish to acknowledge her volunteer service to the Leschenault community. And my last one is a best of luck to all the candidates that are running in the up and coming campaign, and I wish you all the luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Any other councillors wish to highlight? You might have spoken for four of us, Councillor Campbell.
That's okay.
As the last spokesperson. Okay, item. All good, please. Taking a bit from the left. Okay. There is muddy water. Item 17, seal register. 17.1. The officer recommendation there on page 40 and 41. Councillor Burgoyne moving. Second, Councillor Lovett. Any discussion? Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 18, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of meeting. Neil? Item 19, matters behind closed doors. Moving behind closed doors, move Councillor Burgoyne, second Councillor Dickinson. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Okay, so we're on to item 19.97. Just like to wish Councillor Simpson all the best in his retirement from council duties on the Shire of Harvey. I'm sure you will be kept very busy in the future with your interests in the caravan park, but on behalf of everyone here present and all of those that you've represented over the years, thank you very much. It's great input into local government that is probably at times not acknowledged as it should be. Probably the only form of government that has true delivery to the people, except for on a few occasions, I guess. We could probably argue that, but on behalf of us here, congratulations on a stellar career, and I hope you enjoy the ride into the sunset. And as Councillor Campbell alluded to, just wish all of those who are running all the best. There may be potentially four of us, well, three of us in the room, and another one who's absentee today. That might be the last meeting, so if it is, say la vie. See you on the other side. Okay, we'll declare the meeting closed at... Yeah, we've gone. Yeah, we've moved. We're out. We've gone. We're running. So we'll...
I've got it. Yeah.
Meeting is closed at 5:20.